I think we can start, and the rest of the people will join us as we move along. May you please confirm if I am audible?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Okay, that is amazing. Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Zenzele Book Festival in partnership with Tale Publishers. This festival is a celebration of African literature, art, and cultural experiences. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Sisipho Zozi. I am an intern registered counselor, and I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. Before we start, I'd like to first introduce Ms. Andisombulo, which is the founder of Zenzele Book Festival, and she'll be the moderator of the conversation that we're having today. She'll be moderating comment section. May we please, I understand it's a social media platform, but may we please keep it appropriate, have appropriate comments, and keep it respectful. Otherwise, we will have to remove you from the conversation. Also, to the panelists, we do have ground rules for you as well. May you please respect each other and listen before we speak. We may have different opinions in certain aspects, but may we please also keep it respectful when it comes to that as well. Right, one may be wondering, why are we here? Why are we having this discussion? Today, we are talking about psychological barriers that are contributing to the literacy crisis that we have in South Africa. So stats show that South Africa was ranked last of 57 countries in the Progress in International Reading Literacy study that was done in 2021. The illiteracy among South African children has increased from 71% in 2016 to 81% in 2023. This means that grade 1 learners don't know the letters of the alphabet. And by the end of grade 2, still about 30% don't know all the letters of the alphabet. And they're left having to catch up, basically. And it also, addition to that, 82% of grade 4 learners cannot read for understanding. Now we see why this is such a predominant issue, and that is why we need to have these conversations. And today we look or examine closely the psychological contribution towards this issue that we have, which when we're looking at psychological conditions, we're mainly referring to the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral challenges that an individual with mental health conditions or neurodevelopmental disorder may face, which will then impede their learning ability, the way they absorb information, or the way they process information. These conditions may include dyslexia, autism, or ADHD. Right. So thank you once again for joining us today. We have our 4 distinguished panelists, a group of academics. Thank you so much once again for joining us. We have Ronewa Mphephu, an educational psychologist, Akhona Ndzaba, an English teacher, Professor Mandla, Sithole, an educational specialist, and Anne. And may you please help me pronounce your surname, sir? It's a bit difficult.
No problem. It's Fleischack-Thomson. Yeah, it's German, the first part.
Okay, thank you so much for helping me with that. Anne is a learning support teacher. Once again, thank you so much. We will get now to the introductions of the panelists. However, I ask that we respect to the limited time, and already we are late when it comes to time. Each panelist is given a maximum of 10 minutes to do the introduction. Since Ms. Ronewa is here, may I please start with you? May you please kindly introduce yourself to us, tell us more about your work, and what is your stance when it comes to the literacy issue that we have in South Africa currently?
Thank you so much. Hi, Bo. You start with me. I thought you'll start with the other panelists. Well, my name is Ronewa Mphephu, and I'm an educational psychologist. I work at Sacred Heart College. I'm an educational psychologist there. So what I basically do on a daily basis is to support learners and teachers and the school system as a whole to better help the children learn better, and also promoting different ways in which we accommodate learners who learn differently. So being an inclusive specialist as well, to make sure that each and every learner, after I've done a full psychoeducation, the recommendations that I've made are implemented. So that's what I do. I also try to help out in primary schools in Venda. I'm from Venda, Limpopo province, where honestly my dad is a school principal there, and they hardly have any ed psych there at the school to just help the teachers understand why a certain child cannot sit still for 20 minutes maximum. So I try to just implement inclusivity there and further refer to the district based support team after they have just done the paperwork there. So that's what I do on a daily basis, basically. So supporting different schools, and in hoping that the children will be supported better, and also empowering teachers who are with those children 24/7 to just, give them reassurance that what they're doing is right and they should continue doing that on a daily basis. So that's me.
All right, thank you so much. Such impressive work. And we will get to speaking more about that, especially when we speak about you mentioned something about how in Venda there's a lack of educational psychologists. We'll look into that further as well. And since you're also here, can you please kindly give us a brief introduction of you as well and what your work is about?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sisipho, and thank you everybody for including me today. I wouldn't say I'm by any means an expert, but I hope that I can also share something today. So basically, in terms of my background, so I've been a long-term supporter of reading and its importance in learning and success. I had a very early relationship with books in my childhood. So I was read to by my parents as a young child, me and my brother, at home sort of before bedtime. So books became a very natural and fun part of our lives. And we also used to go and borrow books from the school library, which was fun and sort of a little special outing. And I also was an English teacher previously, and I enjoyed discussing literature in the lessons that I taught and sort of bringing literature to life and making it relevant to today's context. I also was a school librarian, so in that capacity, I had the opportunity to be a promoter of books and reading. And during COVID, I was able to supply online resources for reading so that reading could continue, whether it was audiobooks or whatever the platform allowed. I studied a BA Honours at Rhodes, a PGCE at UCT, an MA at Rhodes, and a Master's in Ed Psych at Stellenbosch. And I'm currently doing English learning support at one of the schools in Durban. And in this capacity, I'm sort of keeping in mind the idea of sort of thinking about how learning takes place in different ways, different learning styles, and also being aware of the different ways that people absorb knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Also read up on you as well. Wonderful work that you're doing. I did read your thesis. Lovely work. And I like that you also now moving into the more online part of it to ensure that even though we cannot be physical, but the learning still continues. We are having difficulties. I've been trying to accept and Akhona, somehow it's not working, and Prof. Mandla as well. I'm really struggling with that. But I think we can continue so that we don't waste any more time, right? Right. So thank you so much for your introduction. Your lovely work that you're doing in the field, ladies. We really appreciate your work, and it doesn't go unseen. Even if it's one person being helped, it goes a long, long way. Right. But now we might have someone here watching the live, and they're like, "What do you mean when you guys are talking about psychological barriers? What is that?" Can you please just give us an understanding or like a breakdown of what psychological barriers are and what they entail and what they mean for a child? Anyone can answer. Ronewa, you may go first if you'd like.
Sorry, I'm just having, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
I can.
okay. So by psychological barriers, basically this different diagnoses from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, where it's different difficulties that people experience that affects your psychological functioning. So just to name a few, we have your specific learning difficulties, which on a daily basis are being seen in the classroom, like your spelling difficulty, where as teachers you feel like, no, this child is not studying enough. But again, the child is doing what they can, but it's just that there is a barrier. It's more like a wall in which that is inhibiting the child to fully harness what is being taught in the classroom. So that we can call dyslexia, for example. It could be one of the psychological barrier. Also, trauma is a psychological barrier, especially looking post-COVID. A lot of children lost pillars at home. That is another psychological barrier. A traumatized child is a child who cannot learn at all because they're on a flight fight mode. And when one is there, it's very hard for them to fully understand what is being taught, basically. We have issues with mathematics. It's been a big thing. Again, there are barriers that hinder a child from learning, and we can call that dyscalculia, where it's not that the child is not doing enough practice. They are doing what they can, but a teacher needs to put certain support measures in the classroom. For example, when a child is struggling like that, teachers could undergo what you call the CS process, filling in SNA forms in order for the child to be supported and be referred to specific specialists who can then apply for concession for the child. For example, if a child requires a calculator, they'll get a calculator that could better help them in order to fully be themselves and produce results that are required of them. And there are many. I mean, the DSM-5 has about 1,000 pages with different psychological barriers, but the most ones that we see within the classroom, it's your specific learning difficulties, your spelling, mathematics, a child who cannot even, also a speech impediments as well. Those are some of the psychological barriers where those affect how the child fully understands what is being taught in the classroom. I think that's where I'll end. Someone else may add.
I can just jump in here too a little bit.
That's okay.
So yes, I think possibly what we can also consider, because I think what would be important to think about if a child is struggling in the classroom is how is their hearing and their vision, because those are two very important senses that help us absorb and learn. Can we hear what's being said? Can we see what's being written on the board? That can also affect reading. So adding to what our colleague said is also thinking about the senses and how the senses might impact on learning and how information is processed. And also adding to what our colleague said is with the CIAS process is also the ISPs. So forming a individualized support plan for the learner according to what we know about their learning barriers and how they can be supported. And I think psychoeducation is also really important in allowing, the people in their circle to understand, how does this child's learning work, and how can we understand how they learn so that we can best support them. So that's just a little bit to add there.
Thank you so much, ladies, for that. It's well explained. I wouldn't have explained any better. I've just been given a note to say now we'll have like a part 2 with the other 2 panelists, since we've been having difficulties letting them in the conversation. But that's 100%. Like, you get that in some schools, the child has a hearing problem or a sight problem. And in South Africa, there's so many underprivileged schools that all of those go unnoticed. And it's just seen as if this child doesn't want to learn, or they're not trying to put in the work into learning. And of course, this affects the child, right? How else? Besides the child being impacted, it affect the teachers as well, because they feel this frustration of having to teach, and there's this different personalities in class without the understanding of what it means, right? It also affects the parents as well. Forever the parent is being called at school, your child has this problem. What other ways, or what other other ways have you seen these psychological disorders impacting on teachers and on parents as well?
As we just mentioned earlier, so With how the Department of Education works, actually, there needs to be record keeping. I know it's such a pain, especially for teachers. There's a lot of admin already. But however, in order for the child to be supported, in order for the teacher to be supported and acknowledged for what they've done, and further implement that at home, they need to follow through what we call the CS process. This is the screening identification, where they fill in the SNA forms to stipulate what they have been doing with the child. They write down everything, the symptoms that the child is depicting. They need to write down each and everything that the child is struggling with, and how is the family involved in that. So when there is record keeping, it helps as well as a specialist comes in. They can go through that instead of just running around to different classrooms trying to find out information about this child who needs support. After that, if that is completed, then we as specialists are called in. After SNA1 form, SNA2 form will then be done by the school-based support team. And if the SBST requires further support, that's when the district-based support team comes in. That's when we come in, myself as an ed psych, to try and help this child. I then sit with those forms and see what has been done. Where is the gap? How can we help the child? For example, if the child is struggling with vision, obviously the teacher cannot do much, because unless if the teacher is an optometrist who can then do assessments in that. But anyways, if a teacher can obviously cannot help the child if the child requires an optometrist to assess them. I then have to sit with the child, see if there are any other symptoms, and assess the child, do a full psychoeducational assessment to see where are the strength of the child, where are the weakness of the child. The recommendations, again, will further be for a child to go for an optometrist, to go see an optometrist to assess them. In that, doing that, we support the parents as well. So we call in the parents, have meeting with them, tell them what the teacher has been doing, what the school has been doing, what the SBST has been doing, and what my role will be in supporting the family. Just notifying them that, okay, this is a referral letter that the child needs to go get assessment by an optometrist. If there is a need for prescribing glasses or whatever that the optometrist might pick up, then we will further support you. And then the parents then take the child there. But that is a perfect scenario, basically, because we know many households are child-headed. Some parents do not even understand what an optometrist is. They don't even understand what a psychologist is. They just feel like every responsibility is for the teacher and make sure my child learns. So there are those scenarios as well. But in a perfect family household, that's what it will look like in order to support this child and the family and the teacher.
Okay. And is there anything you would like to add to that? Oh, I think we've lost her. Or is it just on my side?
I can't hear her as well. It could be network issues.
It could be. It seems to be loading on my end. I like how Ronewa, you said that in a perfect scenario, that's how things would go. Because for most South Africans, the reality is that's not how it essentially goes, right? Firstly, we have the problem, or like the challenge with parents not understanding why does my child need to go to an occupational therapist? What is that? I don't have the money for that. And in reality, some parents don't have the money for that. How do we then counter all those challenges?
True. So, well, as a healthcare practitioner, hi.
So finally joining us, Akhona. We'll get to you just now. Can finish her thought?
So as a healthcare practitioner, so this is a private consultant, unless if a district-based educational psychologist is there who will then undertake the role because they're being paid by the Department of Education. But as a consultant, we are, Shem, it's a prerequisite at least to do pro bonos in a year. So, but again, there are thousands of schools, for example, in Joburg. I cannot give pro bonos for all the schools because Nami, I need funds. Hey, I need petrol to go to the school. So, but we do pro bonos for those cases that you can see that, you know what, the school is in an area where they cannot necessarily afford a psychologist, they cannot necessarily afford certain things that are required. So even a medical practitioner, they do pro bonos, but again, there needs to be proper documentation. Hence, I was speaking of the CS process. Did the school follow all the protocols? Where there is paperwork, it makes it easy for one to even do pro bono, So we do pro bonos, honestly. Everyone does pro bonos. You give back to the community. So that's how we can take that. We do pro bonos in order to support the child, the family, and the school.
All right. Thank you so much for that. We'll get back to that shortly. Akhona has just joined. Akhona, could you please just kind of give us a brief introduction to who you are and what your work entails? Okay, so what is your stance when it comes to the literacy issue that we have in South Africa?
Good day, everyone. My name is Akhona Ndzaba. I'm an English and Maths teacher at Laizonia Primary School, which is in Laizonia near Centurion. And yeah, I'm just an English teacher for grade 4s and 5s. I've got quite a few points on that. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the opportunity that I've been given to discuss this crucial topic on addressing the barriers contributing to the literacy crisis. As an English and Maths teacher for grade 4s and 5s, as I mentioned, at Laizonia Primary School, I've witnessed firsthand the challenges faced by our disadvantaged and under-resourced learners. Our students come from backgrounds where access to educational support is limited, and the barriers they encounter are multifaceted. The disparity in resources, inadequate parental support, and lack of foundational skills all contribute to the difficulties our learners face. However, one significant factor that exacerbates this crisis is the Education Department's approach to learner progression. The current national policy pertaining to the program and promotion requirements of the National Curriculum Statements, which are grade R to grade 12, clause 14.3 states a learner may only be retained once in the intermediate phase in order to prevent the learner being retained in the phase for longer than 4 years, which in a phase is 4 years, which is simply allowing students to advance to the next grade without mastering the necessary skills that are detrimental to their long-term success. By not allowing learners to fail more than once in a phase, we create a false sense of progression. This approach fails to address the root cause of literacy deficiencies, and instead, it perpetuates a cycle of underachievement. Learners are promoted without the essential skills needed for future academic success, which only compounds their difficulties as they advance to the next grades. And then we've got, sorry, I've got like pages and pages written. I don't know how much time I have. I've also touched on the key barriers to literacy, which I have 7 points under that. My first point was the learner to educator ratio. A study by Kutso Pitso Mankhela from the University of Limpopo indicated that a high learner to educator ratio negatively impacts the quality of the education. Overcrowded classrooms limit individual attention, making it difficult for teachers to address diverse learning needs and provide target support. For example, from the school that I teach, and our numbers in a classroom escalates to a good 90, and I'm one teacher. There's absolutely no way that and maybe a good 70% of them have learning needs. Sure I understand. Sorry, that's my laptop. And yes, we do fill in the SNA forms that we find that obviously we do not have the skills yet to diagnose a learner, but you can say this is what I'm picking up in the classroom, but how many of those are you going to make when there's 89 children in your classroom, which makes it difficult for me to actually be able to want to help the child because I've only got 45 minutes in the class and I need to go to my next class. Right. And then my second point is resources, which is obviously the learning aids. Adequate learning aids are essential for effective education. Many disadvantaged schools lack essential resources such as textbooks, technology, and teaching materials, hindering students' ability to engage fully with the curriculum. Then number 3, I've got psychological and educational support from our schools.
Okay.
Psychological support is crucial for students facing emotional and mental health challenges. Schools need robust support systems, including counselors and special education services, to help learners overcome these barriers and succeed academically. Now, with this point, I'd find with my 89 kids, and I've got, let's say, 35 minutes per lesson, I spend 25 minutes attending to social issues. For example, why a learner is not able to do my homework. And you find that 50 of them cannot do my homework because of whatever happened at home. So now I'm playing counselor in my teaching time. And my teaching time now becomes lesser, and I still need to cover what we call an ATP, right? Then my 4th point would be living environment at home. The home environment plays a significant role in a child's education. Unfortunately, many of our learners come from homes plagued by social ills such as substance abuse, poor diet, violence, and early sexual activity. These conditions can severely disrupt a child's psychological state, making it difficult for them to focus in class or to complete homework. It is very difficult to want to assist. For example, last year I had a grade 7 child who was a very disruptive child, never does my homework. And when I called the parents in, the parents told me this person goes to the tavern. This is a 13-year-old, goes to a tavern on a Friday and comes back home on a Sunday. In my class, he used to sleep on a Monday. Monday morning, I'm teaching maths and he's sleeping. And that is because from home, that is normal. Like it's a social norm for them to drink alcohol or to abuse any substance. So also the as I'm saying, the living environment at home also contributes to not being able to read or not being able to do my homework. Then my 5th point was literacy levels at home. Literacy levels at home significantly influence the child's academic performance. In many disadvantaged families, parents may lack the literacy skills necessary to support their child's education, further compounding the challenges faced by the learner. When I send a child home with a poem by Shakespeare, and the mother or the father or the parents as a whole have never attended school, how am I expecting my homework to be done? Right.
Okay.
Then we move on to my 6th point, which is the education policy. Current educational policies often emphasize progression over mastery of skills. This approach can be detrimental as it does not address the underlying issues contributing to the literacy gaps and can perpetuate a cycle of academic underachievement. Please don't tell me my time is over, Sisipho.
To catch you because of time. You did start late.
Okay.
So we will need to continue.
Okay, no
But you
problem.
touched on a lot of issues, a whole lot of important issues. You spoke of resources, large classes, parental involvement, and also at home. So I'd like us to touch on the point of parental involvement as well. Do you feel as though this is for all of you and in your engagement with parents, you receive the support that you need whenever you reach out to a parent to say, your child is facing A, B, C, and D issues, and I think this is how we would better support your child. Do you think they accept and they actually implement those recommendations that you put in place?
On my side, it is very. I always say that children spend most of their day with me in the classroom or with us, and I can only implement so much. And if once the child leaves the school, it's a totally different environment. Then that means I don't have a parent-teacher relationship, which I find is very difficult because, as I mentioned, that the living environment is very detrimental. The literacy levels also at home are also very important to a child. So if the parents at home, or the living environment at home, don't find education as key, then there's not much way we're gonna go. Like, I'm just hitting a brick wall, most probably. So that's why I'm saying, for me, I don't have I wouldn't say that the parents are active. Yes, they come to meetings. If they do come, most of them do not come. But if they do come, you just, it's just a matter of, for documentation, that I did call the parents, and now I've just hit a wall, and that is about it.
Yeah. Okay. So it ends up just being almost for nothing, really, or it's just all up to you. And I know you are still new in the field. I was wondering if you had any parent interaction and how that was for you.
I haven't had much parental interaction in my current role, so I can't really speak on personal experience, but a lot of what our colleague was saying, I can very much relate to from the literature that I've read. I think one of the issues is that, one of the things I've come across is that parents believe that reading is the school's responsibility. So it might be kind of left for the school space, and, why should I get involved? It's not part of what I'm expected to do. And then, Rowena, you might also be able to speak into this, but I think, I think generally, sometimes I've also heard that, parents are in denial if there is an issue in terms of, there's a learning barrier or something like that, or they think that they failed as parents. That's what I've also come across over time, just, from hearing things, etc. So I think it's also a case of, providing the right information and reassuring parents if there is a concern, because I think parental buy-in is so important when it comes to supporting their children, and having an interest in their education and having an interest in helping with homework. And I know that that's not always possible if they haven't had that experience themselves, as our colleague was saying, if they haven't been able to finish school, or they haven't, there's been certain disturbances. But I think in general, what I can say is parental buy-in is so helpful, because then everybody can work together and be on the same page. And I think maybe, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it got cut off, but I think just psychoeducation as well, in terms of supporting learners, and what they need, and having that, because knowledge is power. So having that knowledge of how best to support, I think, is really important. So that's what I can add to that thinking, just from what I've absorbed, in general, not necessarily from personal experience, but just from tying threads together from what I've absorbed, just in the general vibe. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And as Akhona mentioned earlier, you'll find that she has like 90-something children in one class, and you find that the whole school has only one psychologist or one educational psychologist. How many students are in one school? Ms. Ronewa, can you please speak more on that and the challenges that you face in being in those type of environments where you find you're the only person that is there to help, and there's so many cases that are coming to you, and you just feel there's nobody to help?
True. It's been a lot. It is a lot. But what I like is I studied at the University of Johannesburg. So I know in order for one, before they qualify, they need to do their internship, and internship is not paid. So what I do is I partner with nearing universities to help in bringing those who are doing their internships to qualify for EdSpsych to come and help me. So that's what I do. So I work closely with the University of Johannesburg. The lecturers that lectured me, like, we have that neat relationship where I'm based. Sadly, it's if I'm based at a school in Roodepoort, that is the school that will receive support, because I will contact them like, hey, I need 5 intern psychologists who need to do career assessments for those children who need to choose subjects for grade 10. And then I will receive that. So it is a lot, honestly, on a day-to-day basis for one psychologist. Teacher-learner ratio, also EdPsych school ratio, EdPsych learner ratio. It is quite a lot. honestly. But I try to seek help from fellow colleagues, those who are doing their internship, to come and further work with those schools, you know. So that's what I do basically, and it has been working for me. Where I'm based at Sacred Heart College, we have JPCCC, where also it's where interns are placed there at that organization, and they come at Sacred Heart College to further help support the school, to also support me as well, you know, and also just recognizing the fact that I'm not super girl, I need the help. So having those people come through to help, to further support, that's what has been working for me. But I understand it's hard, and not every school can afford an educational psychologist or counseling psychologist. We just wait for the freebies that the government will only bring in once in October. But what has been happening now between January and September, you know, so that's what I try to do.
That is lovely. I like the work that you're doing, and that you are calling in a lot of other people to come assist, because the psychologist to school ratio is insane. You know, and we find that there's 6 universities that actually offer educational psychology. How many educational psychologists are being produced in 1 year, right? In some schools, in most schools actually don't have educational psychologists. Akhona, can you please speak on that? Do you in your school have an educational psychologist, or have you been to one where there was, and how did you find that?
In my teaching year, okay, currently school that I'm in, we do not have an psychologist, which is very sad, because coming from before I taught at the school, I was at Kuro, and of course the how do I say it? The life is way different. I was used to having 10 kids in my class maximum, and now I'm dealing with not even triple, you know, of that. And I was shocked at the lifestyle those kids live, and it's so sad, because these kids don't even, it boils down to, they don't even have school shoes. If they don't eat at school, chances are most of them won't even eat, and that's what I deal with on a day-to-day. When I come home, I am mentally exhausted, because I deal with so much on top of me being a teacher. So having an educational psychologist on site would really, I think, really help our school, because there's a lot from grade 1 to grade 7. Each and every one of those 89 kids have something that they need to talk about. And of course, the kids wouldn't be as comfortable with me being the teacher to talk about certain things, because I am the teacher. At the end of the day, they see me every day, and like they know that to this person, I only go to whenever I need help. So as much as being a teacher, you need to wear different hats, but there's a hat that you cannot tap into as much, because of course I'm not even equipped for it, because otherwise I'd be taking someone's job.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've never had a school where they have an educational psychologist on site. However, at Curo, we did recommend to they would come in at school, actually, like maybe once a week, or if we had recommended to those people. With the school that I'm in currently, in as much as we would recommend, the parents would say, I do not have the funds to take my child there. And now it's not a school's problem now, because now we've escalated the issue. Understand? Even taking a child to a special needs school, the parent says, I do not have the funds to take the child there, because the children have a school bus that takes them from a certain point and takes them to our school. So it's you know, it's easier for them like that. So that's how we deal with the crisis of literacy, because we are sitting with children in our classes that need to go to special schools, but they cannot go to those special schools due to funds of their parents.
Right. I like that. And there's a very interesting question that is coming out from the comment section. Tail Publishers is saying, how has the digital divide affected the classroom in comparison to private and schools and public schools? Like you had mentioned, you get 10 in in a private school where you were at compared to 95, right? Of which when there's 10 students, it's so easy to identify a child with a problem, whereas 95, you are overwhelmed as well. You don't know whether you are the one who is the problem or there's the,
I don't even know half of them, and it's been a year.
You see, so they so easily go unnoticed in those type of situations, on those type of cases, right? Yeah, can you please speak on that when it comes to the whole digital divide?
The digital divide is a very crucial thing, because most of our learning curriculums currently, they require research, they require searching for things, and if you are not exposed to any digital or technology resources, then it's difficult for you to be able to succeed in that learning or subject, rather, because if I cannot use a laptop, or I don't even know how to even go to Google, then I have an issue. If everything for me curriculum based is research or digital, and at home I don't have the means for Wi-Fi, I don't have the means for data, then what? So it becomes a, yes, we need to go to 4IR, but what happens to a child that's staying where I teach? And because, don't know, was it 2 weeks ago, they had a question that they had to research. 95% of those learners didn't research my question because they didn't have data.
They have the resources.
See, so yeah, that digital divide is really killing our students. If our curriculum wants to move that way, then they need to provide those resources for our learners in order to be on par with the learners that are resourced, rather, because that means if my learner cannot research for that project, that means my learner has failed compared to a child that is at a school that is resourced with computers at the school. Not at home, but at the school.
Okay. And you might find that sometimes there are children who have the access, or some don't even have the access, but there's still that psychological barrier where you find they're unable to even use these devices or to use the resources even when they are available. How do we then work with countering these problems or all of these issues that we have? And
just like two thoughts I can add just to what Akhona was saying, is that I'm thinking now about the pill study that you mentioned at the beginning, Sisipho, and I think also the idea of, there seemed, as far as I can remember, a discrepancy between schools where there was access to digital platforms, because, people could continue learning online. So they could, keep on with the curriculum.
Yeah.
Whereas schools that weren't able to offer that, there wasn't really always an easy alternative. We did have the rotation system eventually, but I think there would have still been a gap between, the time that passed, and how much school was lost. So I definitely just wanted to add that as a thought, to the discrepancy, or the way that it did disadvantage a large group of the population because of, they didn't have access to the way that education could continue. And then, so just Sisipho, just repeat your question. I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
Oh my goodness. I was speaking on from Akhona's point of how learners may be exposed to the resources, but there's still the psychological barriers that they have, which makes it difficult for them to even use the resources if the interventions are not implemented correctly.
What do you mean by what do you mean by intervention, Sisipho?
So, for example, let's say the child they may be in a school where there is Wi-Fi and there's computers, but because there's still that psychological barrier that has been unidentified, perhaps, then they're unable to use it. I'm making it more clear now.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I understood. I'll need to give that one a thought. Maybe you can run it by Rowena, and I'll come back with some thoughts on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Again, just to go back a bit, sorry for regressing.
No.
Speaking on Akhona and many other teachers who could be watching this, when push comes to shove, we need to go back to basics. In varsity, we learned about the Maslow hierarchy of needs in order to just understand where these parents come from. If at home there is no maize meal, there's no water, there's no electricity, if you're calling me to come attend a meeting about my child who cannot read and write, I'm sorry. I'll rather go to the streets and sell fruits and vegetables to get that 100 Rand for bread or for milk or for whatever. So just understanding where they come from as well, that certain needs need to be met in order for a parent to align with what you're asking for them. So also that, but I understand it's hard because the child is struggling, but yet their needs are not met. So I'm sorry, Akhona, and all the teachers who are watching, but the hierarchy of needs is very important. If there is no food at home, I would rather go by the streets and sell than to come to school. And not that I'm really undermining what you're doing for my child. I respect it, but that child, when they come back at night, they need to eat. If there is no food, then there comes more problems. So that hierarchy of needs is very essential, especially in where we are working currently in villages and so forth. It's very hard to meet the parents where we want them to, because we study at universities where the context in which most case studies are from affluent backgrounds. I studied at UJ, and when I go back home to Venda to support the school where my dad is principal at, I'm like, this is not what I learned at UJ. I'm sorry. So again, context helps as well, and with some things I picked up is filling in Form 22, for example, neglect. If the child is being neglected and parents are not doing certain things that they are meant to do, again, there could be many reasons that why they're not doing it. By filling in Form 22, it helps you as well to cover yourself. Tomorrow, if there is a legal case as a teacher, what did you do? So documentation is important to protect yourself as well. Filling in Form 22, where you are stipulating what you've picked up, and then send it to the social workers, where you could also, as teachers, make relationship with the teddy bear clinics, this places where they offer help for free, so that your go-to person. So where, for example, let's say you're based in Randburg, where is the nearest free teddy bear clinic, free I don't know, facilities within the community that you can get a contact there, that, hey, I'm sending a parent there or a child there. She's saying that uncle at home, when he comes home, he touches me places I'm not comfortable, and may you kindly assess the child. So making connections as well, like networking, is essential as a teacher, and again, you're more than a teacher. You are the mom, you are the dad, you are everything to that child. You're the one who sees that child. You call their name. At home, maybe there could be 10 of them, and the parent even forgets who is who. But you being there, just saying, hey, Akhona, that name, it does something. So just to give you reassurance, you're more than a teacher there. You are everything. So you're doing a good thing. You're really doing a good thing. In terms of the digital resources, again, sadly, not everyone in this world is going to be is going to succeed academically, and we need to speak about that not every child born is meant to go to university, become a doctor, become a teacher, become a psychologist. We need people who are builders, guys, who are going to help us in building households. We need children who are going to be able to fix whatever that is broken at home, and that is a job. And we need to speak more about that, because not everyone is meant to be in academia. We need police officers. I'm sorry, we need criminals for police officers to, I'm sorry for saying this, for police officers to have a job. So let's broaden the way in which we promote one's future and career access. It's not just university. There are colleges, there are certain vocational schools that a child can go to, and sadly some fall through the cracks. No, you go unidentified. For example, myself, the reason I became an educational psychologist, I could see that there's a need, and there's a story to that, but we'll share one day. So yeah. Are you muted?
Muted, Sisipho.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for that. Amazing. You have outlined multiple challenges that you face as a teacher, especially in addressing the diversity in learning. How do you feel about what Ms. Ronewa outlined about how, when you are in the classroom, you're more than a teacher, you're a parent, and and also outlined how you need to network, know how to properly refer a child and all of that. Do you think it's something that is possible or within reach for you, with the capacity of students that you deal with on a daily?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, that as a teacher there are many hats that you play, and or wear rather, sorry. And I mentioned again that we spend most of our time with these learners. So, but there is a certain line, as I said, that I cannot diagnose, and therefore I wouldn't have the skill that my colleagues would have to address a situation. I also interviewed Jay Renile. Hi. So those my skills go and end somewhere, and then Renilo comes in. My colleagues come in there. So without them, my job becomes a bit difficult, because I did mention that I find that I'm spending most of my time in the classroom dealing with situations other than having the time to teach and learn in the classroom. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
I was saying that there is definitely a need for educational psychologists, but then there's this difficulty in accessing them and their availability, because like we mentioned earlier, how there's only just 6 universities that offer it. And I know, for example, Anne, could you please tell us more about your journey into getting into Masters for Educational Psychology?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think just going back to the previous question, I think, yeah, Rowena summed up, yeah, I think it is important to go back to the basics. I think, just tying up that thought, I think sometimes, yeah, people learn differently. And I think it's important that, people need different platforms and different resources. Sometimes training might be involved as well, if there are certain psychological barriers. Yeah, so I think it's important just to remember that not everybody learns the same way, and not everybody needs the same resources. So I think that is what I can add quickly to that answer. Just thinking about what my own sort of understanding of learning styles and learning needs, and what Rowena was saying. I think something else to add is the idea that if a child feels safe and welcome, I'm thinking of Killer education, then they are more likely to learn. So also creating the environment where, you understand how they learn, what they need, and within that space, having an understanding of how what you provide for them in terms of the space and the resources can add to their learning. So that's what I can add to that question. And then just going to your question about my journey. So yeah, I think for me, I always wanted to be involved in education. That was like a key word for me for many years. So I think the kind of obvious pathway then is teaching. But I think when you spend some time in a space, you start having a better understanding of what the needs are, and what how you fit into that space. And so I think for me, I had a better understanding of different learning barriers, and I thought I want to specialize further in order to support children maybe on a more individual basis, where I can be more specialized in that space. And so so I went from teaching, and I think having been a teacher before and currently teaching before moving into my EdPsych internship next year, it has been so valuable, because I think when you have been a teacher yourself, you understand if moving into then the EdPsych space, what the stresses and expectations of the teachers are. And as Akhona was saying, dealing with things like very big classes, having to write reports, having to manage multiple roles and responsibilities. So I think for me, I'm so grateful that I was a teacher before, so that I've got that experience to bring forward, and to I think also to then, have a better understanding of what possible recommendations, in the future to learners or teachers would be reasonable. Because I think Rowena will, I'm sure, speak to this too, and Akhona, is that we have to recommend things that are within the scope of the people we're supporting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and sort of being able to access, where can I refer this learner to a less expensive place to get support? What is my referral network, and making those links with the community, the police, the Department of Social Development, social workers, OTs, speech therapists, and also investigating and asking questions, where can I recommend someone to go where there might be pro bono work, or there might be cheaper opportunities for people to get access. So I think it's also, I think that the role of an EdSpsych, one of the things I can say is kind of being like a link to a whole lot of things, between schools and community. So the three sort of keywords I think about are family, school, and community. Those are like three sort of concentric hearts. And also, if I'm thinking about the Bronfenbrenner model and thinking about all the different contexts of the person, and also thinking about the strengths-based approach, what is within that person's community that can support them? Do they have maybe an aunt who's, able to offer something? What is within your environment already that you can use to draw on? Because sometimes we don't always realize that there's actually a lot already that we can use. And also thinking about the learner strengths, if they're struggling with something, what do they enjoy? What do they want to be in their life? How do they learn best? So also looking at the strengths of the learner. So that strengths-based approach, I think, is also really important in like that positive psychology, like what are the positives we can see? What are the ways that we can go forward with what we have, and how can we then network within those Bronfenbrenner circles, going outwards from the family into society and the bigger processes like policy, etc. So yeah, I think EdPsychs do play a role and teachers in drawing everybody together and being an important link in that process. So I hope that answers.
Thank you so much. Also, speaking of universities, and why did you have to study so far from home?
That's a very interesting question, Sisipho. So Rowena will know, I'm sure, that, and as you've mentioned yourself, Sisipho, that there aren't many varsities that offer the MedPsych course. I think another thing is that they don't take a lot of people. It's a very, there's a very,
Oh, wow.
there's a very limited, it's a very limited amount of people that they can accommodate in the course. Because I think it's quite a resource-intensive course. It requires a lot of supervision and a lot of input from the department. So, they can only take X amount of people per year. And, it's not the case that you're guaranteed to get in the first time because, it's limited spaces. You don't know, every year there's a different competition, I suppose I can even say. Different intakes, different people in the mix. So I was, so I think it's almost a case of you've got to go where you're given a space in sometimes, and it's not always where you live. I decided that Stellenbosch was the right choice for me because I have a lot of support in the Cape, friends and some family. I also really, I've heard good things about the varsity in terms of the educational quality that it offers. So I think you do have to make sacrifices sometimes in order to get where you want to go, and also to follow your dreams. And I think, it was a 2-year course, so it was 2 years in the Cape.
Okay.
I believe, and Rowena can correct me here if I'm misunderstanding, but I believe the varsities are now making a move towards doing the course in 1 year, so that it's a full-time course. And I think if we think about the impact of that, we would then have more people being released into the internships more regularly because people are being qualified sooner. And then there's a more regular input of EdPsych interns into society. So I think that is a move that I understand is happening at the moment. Yeah, and I think then it would be full time. So your focus is fully then in the course. Part time might offer for opportunities to work at the same time, or however it looks, for each person. So I think for me, I'm quite yeah. I think it was a case of you've got to take the opportunity when it comes. You've got to decide what's best for you. And what makes sense to you at the time. And I think if we think about it, 1 or 2 years in our whole lives is actually not a long time to make that commitment. So I think if there's an end point to being away from your loved ones, it does make it easier, and then you can pick up again when you come back. So yeah, that was my journey, and it was an interesting question. Thank you for asking, Sisipho. I appreciate the thought, because my home province is KZN.
Yeah.
But I love the experience. I love the opportunity. I'm actually wearing a Stellenbosch hoodie. Bit of a shout out. I love it, Ronewa. Thank you.
I mean,
So yeah.
I could
Thank you. Yeah.
definitely, no problem. Thank you so much for that.
No,
And I mean, I could also
it's a pleasure.
definitely attest to that, as I'm applying for my master's as well. And they'll tell you that they're only accepting 6 or like a maximum of 8 per year. And you're like, I'm competing with hundreds of other people to get into the one spot. Exactly. And it's a bit difficult that people actually do want to help, that people want to get into the space, but it's so limited and it's so limiting. Ronewa, any pointers of how we could get in, or maybe like anything that you could add to that?
Yo, guys, it's hard to get into masters. Hey, even after you're done with masters, you still have board exam to write, guys. The board exam is hectic because HPCSA changed literally everything. I'm speaking of EdSpsych. Like, yo, guys, it's a lot. But I believe in it's something is really meant for you. If God has placed you in a certain place, things will come. Things will work out for the good, because I mean, everyone was born with a gift, and a gift to you, it could being a teacher, but again, you being a teacher is not just you being a teacher. Your presence changes everything in the children, so you believe in yourself and pray. And even if you don't get in the first time, continue applying, because I remember for me, I only applied once and I got in, and I was sitting next to a lady who said she's been applying for 10 years. I'm like, oh Jesus, how am I gonna enter if it's just one time? So for me, I was praying, literally, I even went to Moria. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Wow.
No, I prayed, and I'm like, God, you placed me in this space because you need to use me to better help everyone. There are few psychologists, especially where I'm from, guys. Everyone wants to be a clinical psychologist, and I've never heard of an ed psych. So from the beginning, even though my dad now, I work closely with him, he's like, what are you going to do becoming an educational psychologist? What is that? So they never understood. They knew a lot about the clinical side, but not ed psych. But manje, I'm working hand in hand with him. He's like, hey, there's a child here. He looks like he has a hearing problem. How can you help? So, passion, and humble beginnings as well. Believe in yourself. You were not placed in this platform just because by chance. You were here for a reason, So continue to believe in that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And just before we wrap up, what recommendations would you give to teachers or to parents? As a parent saying, my child is facing my child has a psychological barrier and they have a literacy problem, and I'm trying everything in my best to help them. What advice would you give to that parent or to the teacher who's saying, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't even find help for all of these children because there's a number of people that can help them,
As a teacher, it's just recommending the child to my colleagues, Ronewa, for example, a person that is better skilled in that field, and then we'll have to find means for the child to attend those sessions with my colleagues, because they are very, very important. I know of a child that did go to Psych Ed, and I remember actually at UJ, I went to the Soweto campus, and you'd find that as a student, you are so overwhelmed with assignments, tests, and quiz. And UJ, I'm very traumatized, Shane. From UJ, I'm very traumatized. I'm not gonna lie. So you'd find yourself very, very overwhelmed, and you would just say, you know what, let me just go to psych ed. And you'd walk up and just go to psych ed, and you would speak to whoever you need to speak to. So can you imagine, as an adult who has already matriculated and has decided to further their education by going to university, if they require such assistance, can you imagine of a child who is just in primary, so trying to find their feet in life and in this world as a whole, dealing with social ills, dealing with so many living environments of things that are happening at home, how much help that child would need. So I would really recommend that the parent does come forward, of which chances are they never do come forward and say, my child has this issue. In actual fact, when you as a teacher say, listen, I think your child has got maybe a hearing problem, or you may suspect that this child has got ADHD, but obviously I cannot diagnose that because, but, I'm suspecting that this child has ADHD or has ADD or some. Trust you, me, this parent will say, I said their child is mentally unstable. And then the meeting goes downhill from there, because I have just said this child is mentally unstable, and which is not the case. I think my colleague Anne mentioned that accepting someone, I don't know, one of my colleagues mentioned something about accepting. Once a parent accepts the child's, I'm trying to find the word. Once not disability, I don't want to say disability, but barrier rather.
Okay.
Once a parent accepts their child's barrier, it becomes so much easier for the parent and the child, because now we can sit and say, okay, how do we then go forward together? Because if I'm saying this child has got a barrier, the parent is saying, no, the child doesn't behave like that at home. Yes, the child doesn't behave like that at home.
And you do find parents that are
You
actually in
do.
denial, which makes it very difficult to support their child. 100%. And
And
is there anything you'd like to add to that?
then it becomes an ongoing cycle, saying, if this child in grade 3 has this barrier, that means in grade 4 there's going to be that barrier, and then it creates this literacy crisis that we are facing currently, because this child is going to go with that barrier throughout their entire life.
Yeah. And you did mention earlier that you just pass on children if they fail that 1 year, they can't fail again, which then is actually not addressing the issue. It is just ignoring it, avoiding it. And the person who gets affected at the end is the child. And is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think just some thoughts that I can add, and Rowena is much more ahead of me in the journey, so she's welcome to pick up any threads and run with things from here. But yeah, I think for me, picking up what our colleague Akhona said is, I think early interventions are the best. The sooner we can support the child, the better, because the sooner we have the psychoeducation shared and the information about the learning barrier, the earlier we can support, and then the earlier the child can also learn how to use what's needed for their ISP or their learning barrier. There's that empowerment, I suppose I can even use that word, in being aware of, okay, this is my situation and this is what I can do. Maybe also that emotional intelligence of being aware of what in the environment might affect them, how other people's behaviors or emotions might affect them, and how to effectively be aware of that and manage that. So definitely early interventions, I think, are really important. The earlier something is noticed and brought to attention, the better, for the child and the teacher and the rest of the class. I think also 3 sort of key ideas also that go, just some basic ideas is, and as our colleague Akhona said, is, has the hearing been tested? Has the eyesight been tested? And maybe even iron levels, because fatigue can also play a role in concentration and being involved in lessons and learning. And what I can also say, just a thought that's occurred to me that was mentioned earlier, is there was a study done, I think it was the SHARE program, which I think is based in the Cape, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I think we spoke about this briefly earlier, and the idea of actually having a breakfast, like a nutritious meal, ideally, if possible, coming to school. Sometimes there are food programs that provide that, because they were seeing, from what I remember from the study, that children, they were doing like a before school reading program, and the kids were just not able to focus. And after doing a little bit of investigation, they realized it was because they weren't actually getting food at home. Like there just wasn't a capacity for breakfast. So then, as far as I understand, they started providing food. And that actually had a very positive impact on learning, because there was nutrition, there was actually people were able to concentrate. So I think also the idea of, sort of investigating hearing, vision, iron levels, maybe even investigating, is the food, accessibility to food, etc. So I think those are important. And once, you've ruled out the sort of the basic things, if I can call them that, then we think, okay, what next? And that's what Akhona was saying, is then referring for an assessment, investigating pro bono options if that's necessary, what is in the community that is accessible for that. From there, the EdPsych, as Ronewa would know, will provide recommendations, and those will fall into the spheres of the child themselves, like what is recommended for the child, what is recommended within the home, what is recommended within the school. So we look at how those three levels can then be addressed, and sharing those, the teacher would then also, be informed in whatever appropriate ways is done to know, okay, in the classroom, this is how I can support the child. So working together on those recommendations to best support the learner. So that's what I can say.
Right. And I think to add on to that,
that would be what I would recommend.
That says that in public schools, that is a problem, which is exactly what we're talking about, because how can we expect a parent to pay for an OT and all the other specialists when there's no food at home? And what do you mean must pay for specialists? And specialists are very expensive. So also that is genuinely a barrier. Is anything you'd like to add on that, Ronewa?
Yes, true. Just to go back to the basics, the Bronfenbrenner model, okay, the microsystem, the mesosystem. As much as we are teachers, I was also a teacher as well. I taught for 7 years, and I made sure that I taught in different platforms. I've been a teacher at a special needs school where I had to learn sign language because I had children who couldn't hear. I had an autistic child. I had a child with Down syndrome. So the thing also now becoming an educational psychologist is, as a teacher, having one-on-one meetings, with a parent, we are not allowed to specify a diagnosis for the child. For example, the child is in J, he cannot sit still. I cannot then go say during the parent meeting, your child has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there could be a lawsuit on you. When I moved to private schools, I've been hearing a lot of those cases, or on what capacity is this teacher giving my child a diagnosis, So there could be teachers here sitting and they could state that your child could be autistic. Your child has autism. On what capacity as a teacher are you able to diagnose my child? Rather what you can stipulate is the different symptoms. The child cannot sit still for 20 minutes. The child cannot hold information info. So just describe the symptoms, because already when you come in with a diagnosis, the parent is not going to listen. They shut off. I need to go and apply for SASA. So they become very defensive. Rather just stipulate the things that the mom or the dad or the aunt could identify. Or, oh yes, when I send him to buy bread, he forgets and comes back and asks me again, what did you ask me to go buy? So stipulating the symptoms, all to avoid lawsuits. This parents say they could take
I also realized that at Kiro, actually, hence I did mention earlier that I cannot diagnose. I don't have the power. I can diagnose. All I can do is just to mention the symptoms of it, because obviously I would know about autistic.
Exactly.
Yes,
as teachers,
they become very defensive, saying,
you are aware of those things. Again, going back to basics, like the school-based support team. I don't know how many schools have this running, the school-based support system. That's your go-to as a teacher who is encountering challenges within the classroom. Where you go and ask the SBST, the head of learning support that there is a child in my classroom depicting certain symptoms. Are they forms? Do we have the CS process going on? And if we don't, can we then get that going? Because as much as children have difficulties in learning in the primary and high school level, university as well, they support that. Like PsyCAD, there are some students who go and write their exams there because there has been proper documentation from primary school. So hence I emphasize on the CS process where we fill in the SNA forms, because it will help this child when they get, for example, to UJ or Stellenbosch, or okay, how has the child been performing? What was the diagnosis? How is their SNA forms? This will further help to promote that support. So going back to your school-based support team, filling in SNA forms, submitting to the district base, making copies, so that when this child goes to university, they will also receive that support that they were being given in primary and high school level. And also finding this freebies, your SEDEX, South African Depression Anxiety, your FAMSA, your Childline, and in giving psychoeducation to the children themselves as well, to the parents themselves. Yes, you cannot afford this, but call SEDEC. As a child, as a parent, you become emotionally overwhelmed and you cannot afford a psychologist, but there's a free toll-free line, the South African Depression Anxiety, that you can call. You're not going to even use airtime. You can go call. There's FAMSA as well. If there's certain things that you're encountering and you need help, you need counseling, these counselors are available for free. There's Childline as well for the kids in the classroom who are experiencing emotional overwhelm. They will help them, So just also tapping into your resources as well as a teacher. Where can I go? Because it will take 100 years for an EdPsych district base to come in and help me. Tap into all the other resources that are available for free. Also partnering in with your community, the social workers, they need to do their jobs. The department is paying, they have to call them and ask for help, because you will get burnt out if you do everything yourself. You will not enjoy becoming a teacher because you're doing everything that you're not meant to do. You're meant to teach, and then you receive support from everyone else. So just seek out for help, and networking. At least now I know you. If your school is based in Johannesburg, we could speak to the UJ because you studied at UJ. And then we could have interns to come into your school and do assessments, and provide counseling. So networking as well, it helps. It does help.
Can I just pose a question? Sorry, to my colleagues. I hear you mentioning networking and finding and. So let's say we have filled in our SNA forms, we have submitted to the districts, they have recommended schools, and then the school accepts the child who's got a certain barrier, and then the parent, as I mentioned before, the parent says, I cannot afford to take my child to that school. Whose responsibility is it then? Is it the school's, the previous school that found the school? Is it the next school's problem to get that learner to their school, or is it the parent's problem who obviously has mentioned that I cannot afford to take my child to another school? What then? Because currently saying that in that instant, for example, now we've got a child in grade 7 and his twin should be in grade 11 or in matric, but he's in grade 7, and it's a matter of the parents saying, I cannot afford to take my child to that school. So this child has been sitting with this barrier for the longest of time, and it's not going to get better next year, not the other year or the other. So that's my context of my question.
Okay. So once a child has an SNA number, hence I emphasize on filling in the SNA 1-2 forms. Once a child has an SNA number from the SBST, the child qualifies for ISASA. That is, what do you call this, grant? Yeah. So SASA can fill in forms for the child to get grant in order to sponsor the child's education. So that's another advantage as well. So once a child has and the SASA money is for people who are mentally incapable of doing things for themselves. So in terms of paying fees, that can cover for that. So I think that's something that you need to also communicate with the parents, that once the district-based support team gives your child an SNA number, you can go and apply for a grant money to further support this child for all the medical practitioners that will be involved in helping this child. And there are also scholarships as well. So SASA, there are certain forms that they can fill in seen in order for the child to receive a discount because of who they are. So that's another thing. But again, the District Department of Education is responsible for that. So the ISS department, the person responsible for placements, is the one who needs to communicate with the parents. It doesn't become your responsibility as the classroom teacher. It's that of the ISS unit. So that's a district-based support issue. I wish our education specialist was here to further elaborate on that as well, because you did your role. You are done. The parent cannot come and accuse you of certain things. It's not your role and responsibility. You did everything you're meant to do. Now it becomes the ISS unit's stuff now. So it's not your responsibility. So hence I'm saying it's very important to fill in all this SNA forms so that the parents can be guided, being given psychoeducation, that you can go and apply for a grant. It will help in paying for transport, in buying uniform, in applying for scholarship for this child within the school, because most remedial schools, most vocational schools, they do have such things. I'm based in Johannesburg, Gauteng. I don't know how other provinces work, but most schools that I've worked with, they do have scholarships. They do have certain certain fees that they will cut off, and then the child goes to the school because they need the learning. So yeah, that's what I could say.
But then again, it goes back to the hierarchy that you're talking about, the SASA. If I'm getting 1,000 rand for this child via SASA, I have to take the 1,000 rand for transport for this child to go to school, whereas this school's transport is for free. And in this house, we currently do not have bread, we don't have water and whatever. So in that hierarchy you were speaking about, my priorities are different to yours, because now that 1,000 rand becomes food in this house, other than prioritizing the child to go to the school that is recommended, which now is it's a 90, it's a 50-50 type of thing, that you did your job, you did whatever, but SASA did their job. Everyone in their corners did whatever needed to be done for this child to be assisted. But now the parent says, okay, I'm going to take this child from Centurion to Pretoria for, let's say, transport is at 800 rand. And okay, then I do not have money to buy the nutritional meal that you as a teacher are recommending this child to have in order for them to concentrate in your classrooms. So
that's so true. That's the reality.
Yeah.
True.
So
true. I understand.
It becomes a
that's so true. I know some schools, they do have school buses, but again, the distance as well, the kilometers, play a role. But that's so true. We have many kids who are sitting at home because of a psychoeducational assessment that diagnosed them with certain learning difficulty. It's reality, it's reality, and they end up involving themselves in drugs and alcohol and whatnot. It's true. That's reality. That's reality, and I see it every time. It's not everyone who will get the help. True.
All right, thank you so much, ladies, and thank you so much, Ronewa, for mentioning the resources that are available, like the FAMSA and SADC, and all of those resources that people may not be aware of. And speaking of the snares, Prof. Mandla actually commented on the comment section. He said that SNA form 2.5 is talking about family, home, and community impacting to classroom situation, but educators are not aware of it. And we will be having a discussion with him at 3:30 to unpack and speak more about that, and also get his point of view, since he was unable to join our conversation now. So we'll have that conversation with him at 3:30. And on the 27th and 28th of September, we are definitely continuing with this conversation, and we're going to be focusing on the social ills and economic and everything evolving around the barriers to literacy as well. We're having a book festival, the Ndzaba Book Festival, in partnership with TALE, which will be at Bet Center. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. And thank you so much, Ronewa, for mentioning the resources that are available, like the FAMSA and SADC and all of those resources that people may not be aware of. And speaking of the snares, Prof. Mandla actually commented on the comment section. He said that SNA Form 2.5 is talking about family, home, and community impacting to classroom situation, but educators are not aware of it. And we will be having a discussion with him at 3:30 to unpack and speak more about that, and also get his point of view, since he was unable to join our conversation now. So we'll have that conversation with him at 3:30. And on the 27th and 28th of September, we are definitely continuing with this conversation, and we're going to be focusing on the social ills and economic and everything evolving around the barriers to literacy as well. We're having a book festival, the Ndzaba Book Festival, in partnership with TAIL, which will be at Bet Center, our website. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. And yeah, it's been wonderful getting your insight and your view. I mean, we could sit here speaking about how much of a problem this is, because it is very prevalent in our society, if we're being honest. Our website. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. And yeah, it's been wonderful getting your insight and your view. I mean, we could sit here speaking about how much of a problem this is, because it is very prevalent in our society, if we're being honest. And in other parts, there's no help. Teachers would ask me, what is an educational psychologist? What do you even mean? What is NES? As you might find, the schools who actually don't even know about that. But we do look into those conversations further at Bet Center on the 27th. Please, everyone who is watching, get your tickets today. And please do join us for those conversations and that event. It's going to be very fun. It's a 2-day event. The first day, that's when we're having the discussions. And the second day, it's bit more fun. We're looking at art. It's a bit relaxed. Thank you so much once again for these conversations. We really appreciate you ladies so much. And yeah, I think we can end the live here.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Please
Thank
join
you.
us as
Bye.
well at 3. 3:30, sorry.
Hey?
Oh, yes, sure.
Please do join at 3:30 as well.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much, Sisipho.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate you including me today. And yeah, it was lovely to learn and share ideas and be part of the process today. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. We learned a lot from you as well.
I'm glad.
You joining us.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Bye.
Thank you so much.